UFC 319 is officially in the books, which means it's time for me to go through and play matchmaker for every single main card fighter. I'm pretty excited for this video because I think there's a lot of interesting matchups out there, some different directions you can go with a lot of these guys. But if you enjoy the video, hit the like button, subscribe. If you have some different matchups, some ones that I didn't talk about, would love to hear them down below in the comments. But we have to start off here with the new champion, Khamzat Chimaev, and I do think he's the most interesting guy to talk about here, where first off, there's just a lot of potential contenders at 185, guys kind of climbing the rankings. And then also we have a potential interesting timeline where Khamzat has come out and said that he wants to fight at UFC 321. That card is taking place on October 25th. And so this would be a very quick turnaround. But if you're the UFC and Khamzat wants on this card, you have to find a fight for him. This is a guy who has really struggled with inactivity. He's had injuries. He has had health issues. If you can get him healthy with a quick turnaround, you got to make it happen. But that obviously makes it a little bit more up in the air on who his next opponent could be, because instead of just like truly finding the most deserving contender, you're trying to find someone who's deserving, but also has the ability to turn around and, actually make the fight at UFC 321. And so I'm kind of just going to order 3 different matchups in like the hopes that all of these dudes could be ready, but I understand that it might not happen just given the timeline for some of these dudes. So I think the number 1 contender should be the winner of the Nasruddin Imavov-Caio Borralho main event. That fight takes place on September 6th. I do think that is like the rightful number 1 contender fight. The problem though is that that is a very quick turnaround, especially for someone who like really should stamp the title fight, right? Like this should be the number 1 contender fight. And it is just kind of extreme, especially in a competitive fight, to expect one of these guys to turn around in under 2 months. If I'm in that spot, I feel like my philosophy would be like, find someone else for Khamzat to fight, and then let me just like gear up, get a real training camp for like the biggest opportunity of my career. So I don't think it's super likely we see that Imavov-Borralho winner turn around in under 2 months. If they can't, it's a tough fight, whatever. My number 2 option would be Reinier de Ridder. And then my number 3 option would be Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. So I do have RDR here as the second option. 4-0 in the UFC. He's coming off a win against Robert Whittaker. RDR right now is ranked number 5. Now, I actually think that Fluffy would be a more competitive matchup. Like, I think Fluffy has a better chance of beating Khamzat compared to RDR, but I do think RDR kind of has the better resume, at least just in terms of his last win. Like, getting that win against Whittaker, that does kind of put you right in the title picture. I'm a big fan of Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I would not be upset if he got the title fight. Just from like a fan perspective, like I would rather see Fluffy take on Khamzat, but I think in terms of merit, I would slightly lean towards RDR. But you do have Fluffy on an 8-fight win streak, coming off a submission win against Roman Dolidze. He's currently ranked number 7. I do just think like beating Whittaker is a little bit better on the resume compared to Roman Dolidze. I know the win was dominant, but just 2 very different caliber of fighters there. So my ranking would be the Imavov-Caio winner. Just depends on the timeline. Number 2 would be RDR, and then number 3 would be Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. I think we could see, any of those names potentially take on Khamzat at UFC 321. Now for the loser of that main event, Dricus Du Plessis. I know I just talked about RDR potentially in a title fight, but if RDR is not fighting Khamzat next, I think he should be fighting Dricus Du Plessis. I think you could have made a case for DDP to potentially get an immediate rematch, just given his resume, if the fight was a little bit more competitive. But I mean, this was dominant. It was not close. Really, the only time it looked like he had a chance to do anything was when Mark Goddard was like giving him the opportunity and standing them up. So there's no shot he's getting a rematch here. I think the DDP RDR fight is just fun. These are 2 guys with very funky styles. I do think it would be interesting to see another grappling test for DDP, obviously a very different level, but I do think he was exposed a little bit in there. I mean, this is a guy that people were claiming like could be the greatest middleweight of all time, and I honestly can't remember the last time I've seen someone get put in a crucifix in a men's title fight, and I think for DDP it happened like 4 or 5 times. So it was a tough look. I think this is a matchup that, keeps him in contention. If RDR were to pick up a win here, this would obviously be like his number 1 contender fight. He would get the opportunity to fight for the belt after. If DDP won and Khamzat still had the belt, he probably needs at least 1 more. But I think it's an interesting matchup. Like I said, 2 of the funkier guys in the weight class. Unique styles. Would be pretty funny to see them go up against each other, and it makes sense from like a rankings perspective. Then looking at the winner in the co-main event, Lerone Murphy, I do think he should be next up for Alexander Volkanovski. Lerone Murphy really needed that big moment to kind of stamp that title shot. I think honestly featherweight as a whole kind of needed that big moment, a real contender to kind of emerge. And I feel like Lerone Murphy came through with that. It was a competitive fight. Pico really had his moments early on, but you land that spinning elbow, you create the highlight reel moment, you definitely like launch yourself into title discussions. Now, I was someone who, for like the 145 title picture, was in the camp of Movsar Evloev getting the shot. I feel like he has kind of deserved it, but clearly the UFC doesn't want to give it to him. And then the fact that they were going to have him fight Pico probably would have been a number one contender fight. And then the fact that he's pulling out of it, and then, Lerone's kind of sliding in there. I don't see how you give like Evloev that shot, right? Especially because they clearly didn't want to in the first place. So I feel like Lerone Murphy's kind of stepped in there. He's taken that opportunity, undefeated, 9-0-1 in the UFC on a 9-fight win streak, right? His first fight in the UFC was a draw, 9 straight wins since then. He now has like that highlight reel finish to kind of help build up the excitement for this matchup. Volk tweeted that he wants this fight. We know that Volk is actually interested in fighting like the dudes who have earned the title shot, deserving challengers. And honestly, as long as it's not Yair Rodriguez, I'm happy. The fact that like Yair was ever in contention is crazy, but I'd be very happy with a Lerone Murphy, Alexander Volkanovski title fight. And then the loser of that co-main event, this was tough for Aaron Pico. I thought he looked really good up until the knockout. I still firmly believe he's like a top 15 caliber fighter. Like if him and Lerone Murphy fight 10 times, you could still make the case he wins 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 of them. Like I think they fight a bunch of times. Pico is certainly going to get his in some of those matchups. And so I'd still like to see him get a shot within the rankings. There's some precedent with Patricio Pitbull. He had a pretty underwhelming debut. Wasn't finished, but it was just a very boring fight against Jair. He still got another opportunity in the rankings, and he took on Dan Ige. That's who I'd book Aaron Pico up against at this point. Dan Ige is ranked at number 14. He was fine taking that Pitbull fight. Dan Ige is a BMF, right? He'll take a fight on hours' notice against Diego Lopez. He'll fight outside the rankings. I think stylistically this is fun. 2 very explosive fighters, both guys with a ton of knockout power. I think this is a good second opportunity for Aaron Pico. Then in the next matchup, we had Carlos Prates with a super impressive win, another spinning back elbow knockout. And I actually really like the call out he had with Leon Edwards. I like when guys go out there, they have a name on their mind, and it's somewhat realistic, right? Sometimes guys don't have a name. Other times they'll have a name, and it's just like they're calling for a title shot and they're unranked, and it's just like a complete waste of mic time. But Prates went out there. He had the name. He had the location, that Brazil fight night. Now, it is kind of a quick turnaround here. That fight night is on October 11th. But from a rankings perspective, kind of makes sense. Prates is like at worst going to be number 11, taking Geoff Neal's spot. I also think he should just straight up like jump over Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns. Like at some point you actually need to be picking up wins to stay in the ranking. So I think he has a decent chance to be ranked at number 9. You have Leon ranked at number 4, but he's coming off of back-to-back losses. The last one was extremely dominant against Sean Brady. And I think it was Michael Chiesa talking about this on the post show, but like Leon Edwards has consistently had like that home field advantage where he has fought in England in back-to-back matchups. He's fought in England in 3 of his last 4 fights. So, get him out of England here. Let someone else, be the hometown guy here. That would obviously be Carlos Prates in Brazil. And then stylistically, like I think this is a fight that should be interesting to Leon Edwards. Prates is not going to shoot on him. He's not going to try to take him down. This is striker versus striker with Leon actually having some wrestling upside to potentially like execute an Ian Gary-esque game plan. And so I think this is a matchup that makes sense. Now, do I think it's realistically going to happen? Probably not, at least on that Brazil card. Like I just don't see Leon Edwards kind of like taking this fight when it's like 2 months away. I don't know. I feel like Leon has a pretty good excuse to not accept this fight. But even on a different card, I still think this, matchup makes sense in terms of the names. And then if it's not Leon Edwards, I think a Joaquin Buckley fight could make sense, still fighting up in the rankings. Buckley fighting down, coming off of a loss. Now looking at the loser from that Prates matchup, Geoff Neal. Obviously, he is going to need a decently long layoff here, getting put out with that elbow. But when he returns, I think Randy Brown is a fight that makes some sense. Neal has lost 3 of his last 4. Legit competition, though. Carlos Prates, Ian Gary, Shavkat Rakhmonov. The one win in there was against RDA, who's like clearly out of his prime and also had been like moving up and down from 155 to 170. So Geoff Neal heading into this fight was ranked at number 11, probably will be number 12, potentially lower. So I do think he's going to have to kind of defend his spot. Now, maybe you book him against like someone ranked 13, 14, 15, like a D-Rod maybe, could make some sense, but I also think he's kind of in that range at this stage in his career where he's kind of playing gatekeeper. I think this is a fun matchup stylistically, striker versus striker. You have Randy Brown. He's 4-1 in his last 5. His only loss was a very close split decision against Brian Battle. He's coming off a knockout win against Nicholas Dalby. And we have seen Geoff Neal kind of struggle with some of these rangier strikers throughout his career. So is he kind of able to right that wrong in this potential matchup against Randy Brown? Then we have Michael Venom Page, and he's a very interesting guy to matchmake for because first off, you have no idea what weight class he's going to fight in. Is it 170? Is it 185? You'd think after this win, right, clearly like the highest ranked win of his career, that maybe he wants to make a run at 185, but then he's talking about having unfinished business down at 170. And so I'm going to throw a couple of names at you, one for 170, one for 185. I think for 170, a Joaquin Buckley matchup makes some sense. Now, MVP is only ranked at number 15 at 170, but his name definitely carries, more pop than his ranking might. You have Joaquin Buckley, who is ranked number 8. He is coming off that loss to Kamaru Usman. And for MVP, I feel like you're trying to find fights where dudes are going to strike with him, but also kind of going to put the pressure on him a little bit, where MVP's fun, he's creative, but you still want to see someone actually bring a little bit of pressure. And I think Joaquin Buckley's going to do that. Now, this fight does have the potential to turn into like fairly wrestling heavy and clinch heavy from Buckley, but he's going to be the much smaller guy. He's going to have to close the distance. He's going to have to blitz in. And I think that's going to lead to some fun exchanges. So stylistically, I do like that matchup. And then at 185, this might seem crazy, but I'm going to throw out the name Sean Strickland. I believe Jared Cannonier was ranked like number 8, number 9, I think number 9. And so MVP is going to slot into that spot in the middleweight rankings. And then you look at like if he's going to fight ahead, there's not a ton of these names that make sense. Like a lot of these other guys should be fighting up. So you have Kaio Imavov in the main event. You have Fluffy RDR like in legit title contention. I don't think they're fighting back to take on MVP. And also stylistically, like I don't need to see MVP get wrestled by Fluffy Hernandez. Same thing with like RDR. Like those just don't really interest me. Israel Adesanya is a matchup that could make some sense, but I feel like that fight, some people might really like it from a striking perspective. I feel like that has the opportunity to be a real snoozer where you have both guys just really hanging back, being really patient, trying to counter strike. So I'm not super interested in that matchup. And then you look at Sean Strickland. I do think he's ranked all the way up at number 2, but it's a striker versus striker matchup. Strickland's probably not going to wrestle him, but Strickland also could potentially have the opportunity to push the pace a little bit, try to put some pressure on MVP, make him a little bit uncomfortable, but there's still going to be some potential windows there for MVP to walk him onto some of his shots. So 2 different options there, Buckley at 170, Strickland at 185. But who knows what's going to happen here? He could be fighting at heavyweight for the next fight. Who knows? For the loser in that matchup, we have Jared Cannonier, kind of in a tough spot in his career at this point, where I think he's 42 years old, pretty clearly out of title contention, but I don't think he looked bad in this fight. He just picked up the recent win against RoboCop. So I'm going to matchmake him here against Paulo Costa. Cannonier came into this fight ranked number 9. He'll now likely be number 10, maybe a little bit lower, but if he just drops the spot to MVP, coming in at number 10. You have Paulo Costa at number 12, coming off a win. He should have the opportunity to fight up. Cannonier should be fighting back. I think this has the opportunity to be a fun matchup at 185. This does kind of scream like Apex middleweight main event, but I'd also be interested in a 3-round fight where these guys don't really have to like try to conserve themselves, especially for Paulo Costa. I would just rather see him in 3-rounders. Then for the flyweight matchup, we had a super impressive win here from Tim Elliott. 38 years old at flyweight is pretty rare, especially to be competitive. Like over a 1.5 year layoff, and he gets the round 2 submission win. He came into this fight ranked at number 11, should get the opportunity now to fight up. And I think Kai Kara-France could make some sense. I don't think there's like one clear, obvious next option for him, but you have Kai coming off of a loss, grappler versus striker matchup. Can Kai kind of get past that grappling test? I don't know. I don't feel super strongly with this one, to be completely honest with you guys, but I was just happy for Tim Elliott. Seems like a really good dude. And, like I said, 38 years old, getting the win against Kai, had a lot of hype even after his loss in his UFC debut. Good on Tim Elliott. And then for Kai Asakura, this was definitely tough. Obviously, like the debut, I don't think anyone's holding that against him. Pantoja pretty much does that to everyone. But I thought Kai looked really solid in the first round. And then it seemed like, I don't know, maybe the takedown got in his head. He started to get worried. He really just like wilted in round 2 where he was getting clipped on the feet, got taken down, and then, got submitted by Tim Elliott. So this is tough, right? Because he was this, big time acquisition for the UFC. He debuted in a title fight, but now you're losing to the number 11 guy in the world, coming off that layoff as like I think greater than a 3-1 favorite. It's not ideal, so he's probably now going to have to fight outside the rankings. I think he was ranked number 15, will probably be unranked after this fight. And so I'm looking for some fun matchups. Let's not book him against any more grapplers, especially outside the top 15. Let's get him some striking matchups. And so I think he should take on the winner of Sumadarji and Kevin Borjas. This is a fight that's taking place this weekend on the Shanghai card. I think either guy who wins, this is going to be a striker versus striker matchup. I think it should be fun. I think, Sumadarji, Borjas, the winner of that fight is probably like one win away from getting a shot at the top 15. That win could be Kai. I like that matchup with whichever guy wins. And so that's going to wrap it up for my full main card matchmaking. Let me know your thoughts. I think there's some fun matchups to be had here, but let me know down below. Thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you guys in the next one.